Hello, Oscar. Grandpa here, and guess who? Moosey. Hey, say hello, Moosey.
Hello. Hello, Oscar. Hello.
Anyway, Moosey's been pretty good. It's hello from me and from Granny, who's just sat in the lounge there, and it was lovely to see you both yesterday, and Daddy too. Although most of all, just to see you. It was, as I say, really lovely, and I'm glad you had a good time at science camp, and I love the fact you love maths. That's absolutely fantastic, and I hope you had a great Easter egg hunt. And you may be watching this through the app, I don't know, on the television. That sounds very exciting. So what we've got to do is read a little bit more about Hiccup and how to train your dragon. And Hiccup was talking to Old Wrinkly. Old Wrinkly had taken up soothsaying in his old age, in other words, foretelling the future, I suppose. And size is all relative, Hiccup, said Old Wrinkly. All of these dragons are super small compared to a real sea dragon. A real sea dragon is 50 times as big as that little creature. A real sea dragon from the bottom of the ocean can swallow 10 large Viking ships in one gulf, and will not even notice. And I showed you that picture of Hiccup, and he's looking sort of, oh dear, that could be a bit disastrous. A real sea dragon is a cruel, careless mystery, like the mighty ocean itself. One moment calm as a scallop, the next raging like an octopus. Have you seen an octopus, Oscar? How many arms do they have? I'm not sure. Is it 8? Have to look it up. Well, here on Berk, said Hiccup, where we haven't any sea dragons to compare anything with, my dragon is just considerably smaller than everybody else's. You are getting off the point. Am I? Asked Old Wrinkly. The point is, I just don't see how I'm ever going to become a hero, said Hiccup gloomily. I am the least heroic boy in the whole hooligan tribe. Oh, that's ridiculous, tribe, fumed Old Wrinkly. Okay, so you're not what we call a born hero. You're not big and tough and charismatic like Snotlout, but you're just going to have to work at it. You're going to have to learn how to be a hero the hard way. Anyway, said Old Wrinkly, it might be just what this tribe needs, a change in leadership style. Because the thing is, times are changing. We can't get away with being bigger and more violent than everybody else anymore. Imagination, that's what they need, and what you've got. A hero of the future is going to have to be clever and cunning, not just a big lump with overdeveloped muscles. So that's you, Oscar, isn't it? You're going to be clever. You're a clever young man. He's going to have to stop everyone quarrelling among themselves and get them to face the enemy together. United we stand. That's right, isn't it, Oscar? How am I going to persuade anybody to do anything? Asked Hiccup. They started calling me Hiccup the Useless. That's not a great name for a military leader. You have to see the bigger picture, Hiccup, continued Old Wrinkly, ignoring him. You're called a few named. You're not as natural as Bashyball. Who cares? These are very little problems in the grand scheme of things. It's all very well for you to say they are little problems, said Hiccup crossly, but I have a lot of little problems. I have to train this super small dragon in time for Thor's Day Thursday, or be thrown out of the hairy hooligan tribe forever. Ooh, Oscar, do you think that's not going to happen, is it? Ah, yes, said Old Wrinkly thoughtfully. There's a book on this subject, isn't there? Remind me, how does the great professor of Meathead University think you should train a dragon? He thinks you should yell at it, said Hiccup, gloomily chucking stones again. Show the beast who is master by the sheer charismatic force of your personality. That sort of thing. I have about as much charisma as a stranded jellyfish, and yelling is just another thing I'm useless at. Yes, said Old Wrinkly, but maybe you'll have to train your dragon the hard way. You know a very great deal about dragons, don't you, Hiccup? All that dragon watching you've been doing over the years. That's a secret, said Hiccup uncomfortably. I've seen you talking to them, said old Wrinkly. That's not true, protested Hiccup, going bright red in the face. It obviously was true, wasn't it, Oscar? OK then, soothed old Wrinkly, calmly smoking his pipe. It's not true. There was silence for a bit. It is true, admitted Hiccup, but for Thor's sake, don't tell. So there's old Wrinkly. Let's look at old and Wrinkly with Hiccup, who's not looking very happy. Anyway, but for Thor's sake, don't tell anybody. They wouldn't understand. Talking to dragons is a highly unusual skill, said old Wrinkly. Maybe, said old Wrinkly, excuse me, you can train a dragon better by talking to it than by yelling at it. That's really true, isn't it, Oscar? You'd understand that. It's much better to talk and discuss things and yell at somebody. That's sweet, said Hiccup, and a very touching thought. However, a dragon is not a fluffy creature like a dog or a cat or a pony. A dragon is not going to do what you say just because you ask it pretty please. From what I know about dragons, said Hiccup, I should say that yelling was a pretty good method. But it has its limitations, doesn't it, old Wrinkly pointed out. I would say that yelling was highly effective on any dragon smaller than a sea lion, and positively suicidal if you try it on anything larger. Why don't you come up with some alternative training schemes yourself? You might be able to add something to Professor Yobbish's book. I often thought that book needs a little extra something. I can't quite put my finger on it. Words, said Hiccup. That book needs a lot more words. Chapter 6. Meanwhile, deep in the ocean. Ooh, that sounds exciting, doesn't it, Oscar? Meanwhile, deep in the ocean, but not so very far from the Isle of Berk, a real sea dragon, such as old Wrinkly had been describing, lay sleeping on the seabed. He was indescribably large. He had been there so long that he almost seems to be part of the ocean floor itself. A great underwater mountain, covered in shells and barnacles. Excuse me. Some of his limbs half buried in the sand. Generation after generation of little hermit crabs had born and died in this dragon's ears. Hundreds and hundreds of years he'd slept, because he'd had rather a large meal. Can you imagine that, Oscar? Having a big meal and sleeping for hundreds of years. He'd had the luck to catch a Roman legion camping on a cliff top. Do you remember the Romans? Have you learnt about the Romans? Well, I'll have to tell you one day. They were completely cut off, and he had spent an enjoyable afternoon wolfing down the whole lot of them, from commanding officer to lowliest private. Horses, chariots, shield and spears, the entire lot went down the ravenous reptilian gullet. And while things such as golden chariot wheels are an additional source of fibre to a dragon's diet, they do take some time to digest. The dragon had crawled down into the depths of the ocean and gone into a sleep coma. Dragons can stay in this suspended state for eternity, half dead, half alive, buried under fathom after fathom of icy cold seawater. Not a muscle of this particular dragon had moved for 6 or 7 centuries. Do you know how long a century is, Oscar? Yep, that's right, 100 years. That's a long time. But the previous week, a killer whale who had chased some seals unexpectedly deep was surprised to notice a slight movement in the upper eyelid of the dragon's right eye. An ancestral memory stirred in the whale's brain, and he swam away from there as fast as his fins could carry him. And a week later, the sea around the Dragon Mountain, which had previously been teeming with crabs and lobsters and shoals of fish, was a great underwater desert. Not a mollusk stirred, not a scallop shimmied. The only sign of life for miles and miles was the rapid jerking of both the dragon's eyelids, fluttering up and down as if the dragon had suddenly gone into a lighter sleep and was dreaming who knows what dark dreams. Chapter 7. Toothless wakes up. Toothless woke up about 3 weeks later. Fishlegs and Hiccup were at Hiccup's house. Everybody else was out, so Hiccup decided to take the opportunity to check on Toothless's basket. He pulled it out from under the bed. A thin plume of bluey grey smoke was drifting out from under the lid. Fishlegs whistled. He's awake all right, said Fishlegs. Here we go. Hiccup opened the basket. The smoke billowed out and made Hiccup and Fishlegs cough. Hiccup fanned it away. Once his eyes had stopped watering, he could make out a very small, ordinary dragon, looking up at him with enormous, innocent, grass-green eyes. "Hello, Toothless," said Hiccup, in what he hoped was a good accent in Dragonese. "What are you doing?" asked Fishlegs curiously. Dragonese is punctuated by shrill shrieks and popping noises and sounds most extraordinary when spoken by a human. Can you imagine that, Oscar? This Hiccup is speaking Dragonese to Toothless. There's a whole page here on learning to speak Dragonese. Wow, introduction. In order to train your dragon without using the traditional methods of yelling at it, you must first learn to speak Dragonese. Dragons are the only other creatures who speak a language as complicated and sophisticated as humans. Wow, that's great, isn't it, Oscar? Here are some common dragon phrases to get you started. Near crapper in a houses fish you, which translates as no pooing inside the house, please. Next one, me mama no like it yum yum on de bum. My mother does not like to be bitten on the bottom. Fish you kinnily gobber oot me fringerlandly. Please would you be so kind as to spit my friend out. Do it one more time. Let's try that again. That's great, isn't it, Oscar? Just talking to it, mumbled Hiccup, very embarrassed. Just talking to it, gasped Fishlegs in astonishment. What do you mean, you're talking to it? You can't talk to it, it's an animal, for Thor's sake. Oh, shut up, Fishlegs, said Hiccup impatiently. You're frightening it. Toothless huffed and puffed and blew out some smoke rings. He inflated his neck to make himself look bigger, which is something dragons do when they're scared or angry. Oh dear, poor Toothless. Eventually, Toothless got up the courage to unfurl his wings and flap up onto Hiccup's arm. He walked his way up onto Hiccup's shoulder, and Hiccup turned his face towards him. Toothless pressed his forehead onto Hiccup's forehead and gazed deeply and solemnly into Hiccup's eyes. They stayed there snout to nose without moving for about 60 seconds. Hiccup, what's 60 seconds, Oscar? That's right, a whole minute. That's a long time. Hiccup had to blink a lot because the gaze of a dragon is hypnotic and gives the unnerving feeling that it is sucking your soul away. Whoa. Hiccup was just thinking, wow, this is amazing. I'm really making contact here, when Toothless bent down and bit him on the arm. Hiccup let out a yelp and threw Toothless off. Fish, hissed Toothless, hovering in the air in front of Hiccup. Want fish now? I haven't got any fish, said Hiccup in Dragonese, rubbing his arm. Luckily, Toothless didn't have any teeth, but dragons have powerful jaws, so it was still painful. Toothless bit him on the other arm. Fish, said Toothless again. Are you okay? Asked Fishlegs. I can't believe I'm asking this, but what's he saying? He wants to eat, replied Hiccup, grimly rubbing both arms. He tried to make his voice sound firm but pleasant, to dominate the creature by the sheer force of his personality, as Gobber had said. But we have no fish. Okay then, said Toothless. Eat cat. No. He made a lunge for Fiddlesticks, who streaked up the nearest wall with a yowl of terror. Hiccup just managed to grab Toothless by the tail as he flew off in pursuit. Oh, wow, that's exciting, isn't it, Oscar? I think we're going to have to stop it there and say bye-bye for now from Grandpa and from Moosey and Granny and Auntie Anna and everybody, and lots of love to you and Annabelle and Mummy and Daddy. So hope you have a lovely time. Bye for now. Bye.